first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some of the other lunar-based designs that we're not able to present today. Again, we held this contest last year, and there were quite a few really excellent presentations submissions for the contest. If you go to our website and you go down to this lower area and have it scroll over, it says Moon-Based Design Contest, and click Read More. You'll see all of the winners, as well as all of the other presentations that were submitted, all the other designs that were submitted. So we have already heard from DIA today. This was their winning design. Lots of great renderings from that. And we also already heard from Carl Greenbaum today, who at the Hermes Moon Base. Our third place winner was Argo Base, and this was from the Futurist Foundation, Naeem England and the team there. So they had a really interesting design. Let me kind of scroll through some of the different elements of it. You can see they're kind of using a lander similar to the Dynetics lander on this rendering. And they had a pretty detailed design of processing through all of the aspects of the base into this system here. Hydroponics was a huge part of their base. So you can see that the hydroponics lab. There's an overhead view of the hydroponics lab. It's kind of showing you how big it is. It's filling up one whole dome on the base. And then here's another view. Those are the Dynetic style landers getting unloaded by astronauts. One's taken off. It's a view of some of the operations outside. Building the base. So that was the third place winner, Argo Base. And again, all of their actual submissions you can read. So the entire PDF, each contestant team sent in a 10-page research paper, as well as renderings if they wanted to. And so you could read all of those on our website. I also want to highlight our honorable mention, which was Ellie's Moon Base. Ellie was a young lady that actually did a physical model of her moon base made out of marshmallows and little wooden sticks. So very cool. We awarded her a free membership in the Moon Society as part of entering that base in our contest. One of the other finalists was the Zors Moon Base by the InSpace team. Now they were very narrowly number 4. It was really close between them and the number 3 winner. So I definitely want to highlight their design as well. So as that loads up. And they had some pretty awesome renderings as well. But they're, like a lot of the bases we saw, their base was located near Shackleton crater. Seems like that's a very popular area to locate a moon base, as we all know, because of the water that is there. And their base was spread over a couple of phases, preparatory mission and main mission. They would make use of the SpaceX Starship, like a lot of others would, because it can deliver over 100 tons. And they made a little redesign of the cargo bay of the Starship to ensure that they could fit in all the gear they needed. And their base was sort of a long design like that, kind of used traditional Bigelow modules, inflatable modules as the main element of the base. Those provide radiation shielding. Also because they've been well tested. in space. They've been, there's one docked to the International Space Station right now, as a matter of fact. They would also make use of some 3D printing to glue some of the portions of the base together. And so here's some more renderings. See, they have, this is inside one of the Bigelow modules. They have some plant growth happening. I love all the poses they did with their flight suits on. And they could really expand the space because the modules are repeatable. It's essentially a standard way to use a Bigelow style module. So they did a great job. I just want to highlight Zor's team. They did really well with this. Very narrow, very hard decision to judge this. Nexus Aurora, which is an online community of space enthusiasts and advocates. They're doing a lot of great research on multiple fronts for both Moon and Mars. They had an entry called Prosperity Lunar Station. And it was essentially a 3-dome design. They actually had for, that was for one of the 2 bases. They actually had 2 bases. They had a base at the equator of the moon, Lunar Hab 1, and then they had a base near Shackleton, that's Lunar Hab 2. So this is like kind of a dual base system. And the thought there was that they would use each location's respective advantages. So Lunar Hab 1 on the equator would be the primary base and the first base constructed. It's easier to get to. And then Lunar Base 2, Lunar Hab 2 would be smaller, and it would be more of a research center with 8 astronauts. Lunar Hab 1 would be more of the tourist destination. Lunar Hab 2 is more of the research destination. They also made use of lava tubes, which is really interesting. So you know, they would make use of some lava tubes as part of their overall site plan. So Prosperity Base, that was a great design. We heard from Kent, that's his base in sight. Now this one was really interesting, okay? This one is called Stone Henge by Dr. Samir El Sayari. And you can see, like, this is a very unique base design. He essentially made a bunch of towers, and these are all constructed out of lunar materials. So let's dig into this one a little bit. Also, his presentation paper was very well designed too. Like I said, it was hard to judge this competition because everything we received was so high quality. So this facility is built around Shackleton crater, literally around it. And they wanted to unite the world through architecture by making a community-centered design. So Dr. Osari, his thought was modifying the lunar landscape in different ways and have it be sort of based on different types of architectures that evoke famous earth structures. So the Notre Dame Cathedral, a traditional Chinese and Japanese tower, the Roman Colosseum, and desert tents, the Arabian desert, so the way Bedouins live. So very interesting stuff. I mean, this was quite an interesting base design. You know, had a few deficiencies in terms of what we scored them on, all the contestants, but yeah, this one really, you know, for me was highly interesting because of its uniqueness. So check that out for sure. And then a couple other ones. Project Shackleton was kind of more of a traditional, let's build a dome over Shackleton crater. Could really mine it that way. Fakaris was using a kind of a honeycomb structure for their base, Almost looks like a couple slinkies sitting there. So anyway, I just wanted to highlight those. A lot of really great lunar-based designs we got, and check those out. So what I'd like to do now is bring on everyone that's presented this morning. So if you guys would like to come on and turn your video on. It looks like we have Carl and Kent and Victor still here. I guess bring the DIA folks back in too. Let's see. Thank you guys all for participating in this panel. I guess the first question I have, you're all veteran moon-based designers now, right? So what is your advice if someone was going to go do the work you did, if someone was going to create a moon base, how do they get started? It's kind of a unique task, right? How would you do that? Anyone could chime in.
Well, I think, James, that we saw a remarkable diversity of approaches. Some very, I had a lot of technical details. Other people had a lot of, had a real sense of what kind of community you could create, things like that, which was also very important. So it, in a sense, how you start depends on where you want to end up. I think that if I had it to do over again, I think I'd probably spend more time dealing with, getting a better cost estimate and getting a deeper sense of reality. I mean, all of these were wonderful, but it's hard to know. I'm still skeptical of the way ahead, and so trying to design a base to do what.
Yeah, I mean, there's no one right way to do this. I think we gave you guys criteria about, we want this to be an engineering focused design. We want it to be realistic. We want it to use current technology. But like when someone goes to build a moon base for real, that may not always be the case. There may be some ulterior motive they have, or some specific task they're trying to accomplish with the base. So any other thoughts folks have? Any advice for a new moon base designer?
There's really two aspects to this, and my first involvement with the Mars Society was I won the Kepler Prize back in 2004, and I went from being at the time a tech writer, walking around thinking, gee, is this within my range or not? Because I used to design things when I was a kid, but I wasn't really an engineer or anything. And after a while, I realized my inner Calvin and Hobbes would never forgive me if I didn't at least try. So in the process of designing that, I realized that with space construction, you are crossing a line that no architect or artist has crossed in the history of humanity up until the last 50 years, which is that gravity is suddenly a variable. So things that you have taken for granted in design are no longer, it's like suddenly, it's like everybody has been walking around like this for 5,000 years, and then suddenly you're the one who can take the eye off and go, oh, now I can see things from a different perspective. And once you do that, you can never go back. So the first thing you need to architect is yourself, is to be the one who can see things that way, which is why I'm still playing with this sort of thing after all these years, because it's just such a beautiful mental exercise. Now, we are going from the Da Vinci's Notebook, everything is a toy phase, to actually wanting to do the real thing on the moon. That's going to require people to understand the aspects of the history of technology and so forth, and how one becomes a startup and how one gets ideas adopted and so forth, and surround themselves with talented people whose talents are not in your zone. So for example, like you said, some is artistic, some is more engineering, some of it is more project management, some of it is more holistic. You need all of those things, because my reactors are napkin sketches, but my other aspects of my things are more mature. Other people, they would do an elaborate reactor or an elaborate artistic approach. All those things are needed to make a workable, compelling, and beautiful design that humanity can be proud of.
Any thoughts of Victor or Kunal?
Yes. I think we can learn a lot from the remote outposts that we have developed for mines in the Andes, in the highlands, or in the Arctic. All of them have the common element of being practical, being modular, being perhaps modest in the architecture, but practical. We need shelter, we need comfort, we need heating or conditioned environment, and we need a good catering. So we need all these spaces for starting operations working and resting enough until we develop a settlement that will become a small city or something where everybody will be living and exchanging time or leisure time or discussions and so on. But the most important thing is that we are limited in the capacity of the rockets and what we are bringing to the moon. So later we have to deal with things like 3D printing and other ways, other means of producing our own construction elements. And later we will find out that gradually these constructions, and that's why it's important for them to be modular, will become from temporary or pioneering to more permanent. And later also we will welcome visitors, have panoramic windows, platforms for rockets, and also for telescopes, as it was mentioned. And I think I like the idea of the two bases, one in the equator, which it will be more touristic and perhaps more the one that faces the Earth, and the other, the South Pole, where the mining operations appear. So I think the suggestions are very good. But also to round up, I like the idea of evoke the cultural elements from the from civilization that could be brought up to the moon as leaving some milestones of humankind culture and history.
Thank you so much. And welcome, Rishal. We just added Rishal to the panel as well from the DIA team, our winning moon-based design. The question is, what advice would you guys have for someone that's going to design a moon base now that you've designed your own? Any thoughts?
When we discussed about things, most important concern was the sustainability of its base once we have things set up, because we will be heavily dependent for resources on Earth, and as opposed to the ISS, resupply missions to the moon will be very expensive and also much more challenging compared to just sending it on ISS. So I think we need to think more also about how do you sustain the base, because now if you can see, we are at a stage where getting to the moon is no more a critical challenge. We are sure that we will reach the surface, but then once you do, how do you sustain it for a long time? Because if we say a long-term base, if you want to get into anything like production of propellants, or even if you want to start prospecting the lunar surface, we need a long-term solution for resources. And I think that is a major point of concern right now in terms of moon, because we can get there.
Do you have anything to add, Rishal?
Yeah, okay. So one more concern with the lunar settlement that we thought about was radiation. We know long-term radiation can affect, and we only have a data of around astronauts staying in space for an year on ISS. So if you're thinking of putting man and making him stay for, say, more than 1 year, say like 5 years or something, we can slow down the radiation for sure using the regolith layers or some some insulating things that can slow down, but still they will be facing heavy doses of radiation, and during EVS, because that could be one more factor. So we are trying to mitigate that problem currently.
Thank you. Question for everyone. Was there something you saw in someone else's design that you thought was really interesting?
I am really like the heliostat for bringing in the light. I think it will be very nice because having natural light is also important for sustaining long-term base anywhere. So I think that was a pretty good idea.
There was a lot of just beautiful, both engineering and artistic work across the board. And the thing about these competitions, I've been watching it from both as a participant and as a judge on occasion over the last 15 years. And just the quality of work has just gone through the roof because you'll have these university teams with 20 people or whatever, all with the latest cutting edge tools and 3D printers and so forth. And, guys like me can't compete like they used to, but it does mean that, no disrespect to the engineers on the call, but who did amazing work and placed better than I did. But it's getting to the point where it's becoming democratized and it's becoming taken seriously. So I think a lot of these designs just have, I could not enumerate every little thing I found amazing in this competition and this is a much smaller competition than some of the others. So it's not amateur hour like it used to be.
Yeah, well said. This was not amateur hour by any means. Any other thoughts you guys had for a design feature in someone else's design that you thought was really interesting?
I was thinking on the tilapia fish tanks. I mean, that's a very, very good idea, and it's one of my favorite dishes. And that's the only source. But food would be one of the main concerns. So anything with greenhouses and self-grown plants and other type of food, living animals that we can have will do great and will bring this sort of comfort that people needs. The psychological part of the camps is important because people will be in cycles in where they may miss the earth and their families or so if they don't bring anyone, or in any case also going back to normal gravity. So cycles of perhaps no longer than 2 months for every person will be kind of acceptable as it happens in the Andes or perhaps in the Arctic. Yes.
Yeah, I really enjoyed and appreciated the design element of the magnetic track that would allow you to adjust gravity to higher levels than exist on the moon. That remains one of the human challenges of living. We understand people can live for, people have been up in the ISS for 20 years, not the same person, but and yet there are non-trivial biological changes that happen. And so long-term habitation on the lunar surface at 1.6G is not a slam dunk. When I was doing I did a piece for a different conference. I did a poster on just the aquaponics, and one of the knowledge gaps that I cited was, how will the fish thrive in 1/6 gravity? Will they be able to reproduce? And the same applies to people.
Yeah, going back to the food thing, and by the way, if you are raising tilapia or cooking them, slice a banana and put it on top. It's delicious. But I grew up on a farm in the Midwest, and my girlfriend is Filipina, and she grew up on a farm in Philippines. And it's interesting what is common and what is different between the two, because with her it was coconuts and things like that. So one thing I would love to have is, and the nice thing about having 4 greenhouses in my design is 4 completely different climates for diversity of taste in food. And then this goes right back to the epigenetic studies of what works, what doesn't work. And what we'll probably have in the long run is this odd little hybrid of biological and consequently food choices going forward, including local adaptations that were not possible on Earth, and that will eventually be an export industry probably from space. Is, hey, coffee grown at 1.6G is completely different. Try it,
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of people like Hawaiian coffee because of the volcanic soil. I can imagine, I can't imagine what space coffee is going to be like, for example. Yeah, and Sean Moss has a comment, controlled environment agriculture, like that's a real huge topic that we have to go figure out. I'm curious, what would you guys add to your design if you were able to redo it? Or what would you, change or subtract from your design if you're able to redo it now?
I think for us, we would also try and focus more on the governance and management system, because technologically, yes, it's important and we would be there, but then having a sustained international collaboration for a lunar base is also very important, because without that, nothing's happening. Not just like economic, but also like the technological, I would say, transfer of knowledge between like across the countries to help each other. So again, that I think James mentioned in the design, like during the presentation, about a polycentric system that will come up, but that will come into the picture once there is a base setup and there are different departments. But before that, sustaining through changing government is important, because the governments will keep changing everywhere in different countries. It will not be, obviously the project will start by a major space agency, but then eventually it will be a collaboration of multiple agencies. So sustaining it through around like 10 years, say, for example, to set it up completely will take a lot of time and effort, and sustained collaboration would be very important for that to keep happening.
Any other thoughts? What would you add or subtract or change with your design?
Well, James, go ahead, Victor.
Thank you. Yeah, I would focus more on the energy generation and saving and recycling of everything that we produce or generate. And I think that is an important thing that we could find ways of utilizing or maximizing the utilization of our resources for that. And the other is the way we grow, the modularity that could be external or internal in the sections of the infrastructure, such as like a space station or something. How do we grow, in what direction, and for what purpose? Yeah, that would be it.
Yeah, I started working on some more details of the thermal mining system, including a specific design for the RF system. And then I discovered NASA's Break the Ice Lunar Challenge. And so that was a lot more work. But I did manage to put together a submittal for that went in about a month ago. It's, the notion of being able to sublimate volatiles out of the lunar regolith without having to move the dirt around is very compelling. And the real challenge is that, based on the few samples of lunar regolith we've got back, they vary enormously in terms of nanophase iron content and things like that, which have a strong control over how much penetration you get, how much heating you get. And so, maybe the Viper mission will come back with some answers which help, but it's still not a slam dunk.
Yes, I'm looking very much forward to the science results of Viper to see what's going on with a lot of things on the volatile side. Kent, any thoughts for you?
Yeah, just one minor thing. I going back to Carl's point, I deeply appreciate all the work you put in on the sintering process, because for a lot of it, a lot of us just read an article about it and go, oh, that's cool, and we just throw it in our designs and move on. But you've done enough of a deep dive on it that you're getting serious about it. So if I can if I can just put on James' hat for just a moment and say, please do a deep dive on that, and give him information to put on the Lunarpedia part of the website, because that is a really important thing to understand for not just your design, but all designs going forward. That is really critical work to leave your fingerprint on the future.
Well, thank you. Right now I'm at about 4 days per kilometer. So there's room for improvement, but yeah, well, talk to James offline and see about what we can do about that.
Yeah, Lunarpedia is our wiki-based encyclopedia. Anyone can edit it, and we're trying to build that out to be a great resource for lunar settlement. Question from Ben Smith. What dust mitigation strategies would your design employ, especially if it involves disturbing large amounts of regolith? It's a great question for the health of the astronauts.
Well, in my research, I found I took the slide out in the interest of time, but I found a paper by a NASA researcher which just blew my mind. You know, that the regolith, very fine, glassy powder, electrostatically charged, sticks to everything. And this researcher created a series of coils embedded in a piece of plastic, and he energized it with alternating currents. I don't remember the frequencies or whatever, but the test result, and there's a matter of fact, there's a plot in the in my paper. He took a 10 by 10 centimeter photo solar panel and had it cooking, was going, and over that was this panel with all these coils in it. He sprinkled regolith simulant on it. This is in vacuum. They sprinkled regolith simulant on it until the solar panel output dropped to about 20% of its initial level. And then he turned on the power to these coils, and in less than 2 seconds, it was back up to, I think it was like 98% of the original solar panel thing. Boy, opportunity could have really used one of those. It was just, it was just one experiment. It's obviously, a small scale, but the potential for electrodiaphoresis, just, energizing these particles and getting to fly away is, sounds like it has a lot of potential.
Yeah, a lot of it is just a matter of if you're using the lunar dust as part of this, sintering bag process, you're scrubbing it like a construction site. So so within a kilometer of my base, it would probably be scrubbed down to the bedrock. So you could do routine operations outside without so much dust and so forth. But beyond that, when it comes to, getting into other territories for exploration and so forth, then processes like Carl described would be more accurate.
Any other ideas or thoughts on dust mitigation?
Another aspect, like obviously we are also like into looking towards the like activities which need less requirement, less like excavation. So specifically like the material sintering and everything, but some processes, for example, the landing itself is going to cause a lot of dust to be there in the atmosphere, and you can't do much about it. So I think it would be a optimized distance. The landing and launch site should be at an optimized distance from the base, so it's not far enough. It's close enough so that you can get all the payload to the base, but it's not too far that you have to carry too much, or like the distance shouldn't be too much for you to carry, but it should be far enough that it's safe. and like also from a safety perspective, because landing and it's still a sensitive point, and that's I think the most critical part of the phase, like the soft landing on the lunar surface. But so yeah, that, and we can't do much about it as of now, considering any near-term technology of landing without having lots of lunar dust in space. But so the distance, so that's how we also looked at it in our design, the map. So the launch site is located, I think, around 1 or 2 kilometers from the base, and then there will be unmanned rovers or different robotics to carry all the payload. For example, if it's Starship, we have 100 tons of payload to carry. So that needs to be considered as well. But then it shouldn't be too far that we need huge rovers itself to have it. So I think there is a sweet compromise that needs to be made there. But yeah, lunar dust is still also like radiation and lunar dust are, I think, good challenges to take care of at this point.
James, I also want to mention that submittal I made to the Break the Ice Challenge was titled Subdex. Stands for sublimate, don't excavate.
As you guys were thinking through your design, was there a particular aha moment for you that something just crystallized for you and you're able to put it into your design?
Since I'll give everybody else room to think here, I was trying to figure out how to do my roof design. So I ended up doing a geomag arrangement, and I spent probably an hour tinkering with this before I came up with something that was workable. So if aspects of my thing look like toys, that's because they were fabricated on them.
Anyone else?
Yeah,
Victor.
I think the aha moment in our concept was our vantage point for appreciating the work that we're doing. Perhaps the fascination or the awe that we can have seeing a huge crater in permanent darkness, or see the moon rising from one side or the other. If it's on the South Pole, would be kind of more I don't know, surrealistic, but in any case may look more or less like living in Alaska or other extreme places. And the other is being able to appreciate or kind of visualize what we can see, and later, of course, watching the stars or with telescopes or just with the naked eye, I think would be a special thing, very appealing and attractive for the visitor.
I think the aha moment for me was when I discovered this inflatable habitat concept where you could basically bulldoze the regolith over the bladder before you inflated it, which would greatly simplify the construction. And it was in a paper. It was in a 1996 lunar construction paper that I was flipping through, and just one little sketch, and a small paragraph. And I thought, yeah, that'll work.
I think the goofiest moment I had was I was looking up the numbers for the radiators for that nuclear reactor, and I thought, well, these are for deep space. What's it going to do on the moon when you've got the ambient heat of the moon and everything, and full daylight, and you can't escape it with shade? And then it's like, if it's full daylight, put a damn solar panel on it, and then use that to mitigate the difference. So it was just that was probably it wasn't an aha moment so much as a duh moment, but yeah.
About DIA team, any aha moments from you guys?
Yeah, I would say for us there were two aha moments kind of. So one was while we were structuring the modules of our of the base, we were planning like how we can make it safe. Say for example, if there is an emergency evacuation, people should be able to get out of the base or that particular module immediately, and that's how we came up with this modular arrangement. So each module or each room of that base is kind of independent of each other, and can be, in case of emergency, that particular module which is facing the problem can be shut down from the rest of the other base and won't be affected in terms of power or anything else. And also people like for every module there is an exit point, like people can directly step out outside the entire base structure onto the lunar surface. So that was kind of a aha moment that I mean, we were happy that we have some safety plans. And second part was we are having a kind of cupola structure. So because there are no windows inside for our base, we were kind of missing that beautiful lunar view and also viewing the earth. So one of our team members came up with this idea that we have an observing window on board ISS. Same way we can have some similar gallery or viewing port outside our base, wherein people can stay for a few moments. It will be shielded by thick glass to slow down the radiation, and also people can take a good look and have an overview effect. So yeah, we were pretty happy for having that cupola structure.
Thank you.
Another one.
Go ahead.
If
Go ahead,
I may,
please.
though it was when during the architectural planning of the base, because so we came up with the toroidal structure like from a very engineering perspective and everything else. But while developing the technical floor plans, we had our aha moment where finally everything lined up properly, and we could decide the base itself. The technical floor plan was made in a way which was also aligned with our construction timeline. So it was not as if like we had to change anything for that. And when everything just lined up, it was like that was our moment, like everything is okay and aligned and this works and we can proceed with that. Because that technical floor plan was a pain for us to come up with solutions without problems. Like every floor plan had some problem. Oh no, we can't do this, we can't place it here. There's a problem, we can't have the crew sleeping here, we can't have the community models here. So that lining that up was also a major task.
I see. Okay, let's move away from the hardware for a second. If we assume that your base is built, okay, and it's operating on the moon's surface, how would you talk to the people back on Earth about governing and legal aspects? I mean, I'm sure you guys are aware that there's really no legal framework for commercial bases on the moon at this moment. We're all governed by the Outer Space Treaty, and there are some things floating around like the Artemis Accords, but do you have any thoughts about how you would lobby Earth to make sure that there was a proper legal framework for things like property rights for mining and things like that?
I think one aspect would be to essentially detach the entity, because we're getting to the point where regulators are getting into a mercantilist attitude where they see people as not independent entities, but as property of the state. And so if like you're American and you move to another country, you may still be taxed in the United States. That's that's kind of an interesting, one of the founding principles of the US, it was that we were not property in terms of the state as a whole. Whereas in other cultures that, if you bought 100 acres of land and there was an indigenous village there, they became part of the property of the state. So I would like to set up an organization where you have either an NGO or a corporation or something that is within the regulatory structure of whatever nation, whether it's US or Luxembourg or whatever, that does all that work, that works in conventional fiat currencies and so forth. But when it comes to the base itself, that is done on a separate channel. It's almost like a glove box where you reach into the thing, and you can touch things, but you're not physically coming in contact with that entity. It becomes separate, so that if there is a regulatory change on Earth, if there's a shift in government or so forth, you don't, destroy the infrastructure going up to a space settlement. You can simply change whoever's reaching in the glove box, but you're not pulling it into that magisteria of the government entities. Because if space is for everybody, then it should not be for any one entity, including the United Nations, to be in charge of that thing. I think it needs to be, we need to not assume that the entire universe is under our control.
Yeah, I have just an idea. I think I agree with what has been said, and that it has to be like a new entity that welcomes all the countries in equal manner, the same way, and that this is a common or a new space where a new place where production industry, manufacturing, science, studies, and leisure could live together, and that people will feel welcome. It could be a separate entity. I mean, I don't know if United Nations could be something similar, perhaps not exactly like that, but some new identity. And I'll go one step beyond and say, what will happen if children start to be born on the moon, and they will create their own identity? And there's really nice stories of people born on the moon or born in Mars that also will have their own perception of the Earth as like a remote place, and that will create also new rights and new feelings of I mean, this is my hometown, and they will have a different perception of that. So they would like to welcome people from the Earth and have them in a kind of a, again, the concept of Epcot Center may arise, like a sort of all nations and one world or something, or a second world, or second Earth, or a home away from home. All these cliches may work very well for feeling, making people feeling comfortable in this new environment.
I'll just like to add that I mean, what we were thinking is we kind of have a structure which will be there on the Earth as well as on the lunar settlement to look after the activities, all the management stuff. So most of the regulatory decisions will be taken by the management that is there, going to be there on Earth. And if there are certain problems that would be arising on the base, either the base can directly contact to the ground control, or there will be also a kind of a manager or a leader who will look after the activities, day-to-day activities, and of course the polycentric government sort of thing. And another thing would be we were thinking about not having a sovereign nation, like a sovereignty, or declaring the Moon Society as a completely different set and having its own flag, because that can become an area of conflict. There are certain international space policies and lunar agreements that are done, and it says that no one can own the land and something like that. So we were thinking like the moon base can have its own society and have its own different culture, but it can't just declare its own sovereign nation or can have its flag. So they will still be called Earth people, unless they are not going to stay there lifelong, like they will be on the mission. But yeah, of course, I mean, they will be standing out from the people as that of Earth. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. We're out of time. Thank you so much for participating in our panel today and for presenting today at our conference. We really appreciate it. And we hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.